Hi everyone, I'm Dr. David Wackenfeld, the Chief Scientist here at the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park Authority with another one of our weekly reef health updates. As we talked about last week, the reef is still showing the typical north-south variation in temperature. Right up here in the far north, we can see water that is above 30 degrees centigrade, whereas all the way down here in the far south of the marine park, there is an area of water that is below 28. So we've got that same north-south variation. Over the last week, much of the water in the Great Barrier Reef has gotten warmer, and we can see that from this diagram from the Bureau of Meteorology's Reef Temp product. But that warming is exactly what we would expect as we move from the middle of January and now getting towards late January. So this warming is to be expected. If we now look at the temperature anomaly for the Great Barrier Reef, we can see that a lot of the park is actually a little bit warmer than average, more so than it was last week. Again, though, that's fairly typical as we move through the month of January. So remembering that this anomaly is a comparison to the long-term average water temperature for the whole month of January. So we would expect at the start of the month for things to look a little bit cooler than the average for the whole of January. And as January warms up, as we would expect it to, that anomaly will start to look a little bit warmer, and particularly as we get into late January. So the fact that this is looking a little warmer than it did last week is not necessarily anything that needs to immediately concern us. I would draw your attention to this interesting little blob of really quite bright red water, which is more like a 2 or 2.5 degree anomaly that's up in the far north. That may look concerning at first blush, but for the most part, that blob of water is actually off the edge of the continental shelf and therefore not affecting coral reefs. And also, in fact, that blob of water is both much smaller and not as big of an anomaly as it was 5 days ago. So I've been watching that quite closely, and that has shrunk and diminished in the deviance from the average temperature over the last 5 days, which is great. Obviously, though, that is an area of warm water, much warmer than the average in the far north of the Great Barrier Reef, and we will be watching that very closely in the coming days to see whether that continues to shrink or starts to grow again. Once again, the bottom line of what's really important to what the corals are experiencing is this map from Reef Temp, which is the consideration of the degree heating days. So this is an integrated measure of how hot has the water been, how much hotter than average, plus how long has it been that hot. And this is a really good indicator of thermal stress and when we might see coral bleaching. Again, much of the park is dark green, which is great. That's what we want to see. Down in the south, in the inshore areas, we have this ongoing persisting patch of mild thermal stress, and a little bit more than that up in the far north. But again, none of these areas are showing signs of being something that would concern us in terms of mass bleaching. We need to keep an eye on these areas as we go through the rest of January and into February. But at the moment, this map is actually looking pretty good. The forecasts for the Great Barrier Reef, both from Australia's Bureau of Meteorology and from the United States National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, are predicting that for the rest of January and into February, we will see ongoing thermal anomalies through much of the marine park. We do expect there to be further thermal stress to corals, but not necessarily enough to see any kind of severe mass coral bleaching. It is very much the specific weather that we get in terms of wind, waves, cloud, rain, sunshine, the very specific weather patterns in different parts of the park that will dictate what happens as we go through the rest of summer. So we have to continue this watch and wait period. We're going to be watching these satellite products that I've been showing you very carefully, and obviously equally we're looking for any reports from out in the field, both of healthy reef and of bleached reef or bleached corals if you see them. So please have a look at our website, download our Eye on the Reef app, either for Android devices or Apple, and help us out by being our eye on the reef. That would be great. Thank you for helping, thank you for watching, and I will see you all again next week.